We're back here midway through the Monday afternoon show. Greg McElroy joining us. And Greg, of course, for those who don't know, Greg hosts a show with Cole. I don't know why you wouldn't have known that since they were sitting right here a week ago on WJOX in Birmingham. Greg, I'm really curious because we have not spoken often enough on this program tonight about the Iron Bowl. But what was the reaction from your audience today about what happened on the Plains Saturday afternoon?
Well, Paul, very little reaction coming from the Auburn faithful. I think most people that you talk to were very proud of what Auburn put on the field on Saturday. And then, of course, there were few moments that they're probably going to nitpick. For instance, why did they run the ball out of bounds? Why did they attempt to throw with 11 minutes left up 10? Why did they not go for two in the first overtime? I mean, I think there were a few moments in which you could point to and say, yeah, they kind of dropped the ball in some cases, but most of the conversation centered around Alabama fans being very upset with their offense and their inability to, I think, generate much throughout most of that game. And while I understand very much why they would be a little bit frustrated, I think you also need to go back and listen to what Nick Saban had to say last week when referencing those fans and their disapproval of anything that their team is currently doing. They went on the road into an insanely hostile environment, played against a team that had their very best stuff that day, and survived to tell the tale for the first time in 6 years. So I think it's easy to pick on the low-hanging fruit, knowing the team that's looming for Alabama, but then again, they just went on the road against their rival, had their C-plus stuff, and still found a way to get a win, which I think is commendable regardless of what it looked like from an optics perspective.
And which brings me to the next question. And yeah, Alabama played rather poorly and won. It was, I mean, I remember another drive in 2009 in the same building by you. That was, it was different because the expectations weren't so high that Alabama could just impose its will, but it was definitely scary. If you were an Alabama fan, knowing that the entire season and the national championship rested in your hands. I think that was the scariest part. But the point being, Greg, and you pulled it off. The point being, why does Alabama? Is this explain to those of us who don't understand football like you why Alabama has these type of games, or is this just who they are?
Well, I mean, they're a young team. I think what a lot of people fail to recognize is, well, you could say, well, look how many 5 stars they have. Look how many 4 stars they have. That's fine. Why is it that you see teams like Loyola Chicago knocking off Kentucky in basketball when Kentucky has a bunch of future NBA players and Loyola Chicago doesn't have any? It's because a 3-star player that's played 5 years or 4 years in some cases is just as good and just as mature and just as physically prepared to take on strain as a 5-star player that's 18 years old. And I know that Alabama's roster, especially on the offensive side, isn't comprised exclusively of young players, but that's a big part of it. This year has been a growth year for Alabama in a lot of ways. Having to replace what was maybe the best offensive personnel that Alabama's ever had from just a year ago. So I think it's one of those, hey, it's a tough place to play. You're going on the road and against a very, very well-coached team, knowing that you have Georgia 1 week away, and all anyone's been talking about for the last several weeks has been Georgia, and that ultimate game that's 1 versus 2 and what that could mean for the playoff and things like that. I think you have a relatively immature team that has a difficult time being at their best week in and week out. Now, all that being said, Paul, even though they haven't been at their best, last time I checked, and we talk about this all the time, whether it be about Cincinnati, whether it be against Georgia, whether it be Notre Dame, whether it be, doesn't matter, any team, winning is winning. And ultimately, we might fast forward, and this week, Alabama might lose handily at Georgia. They might. But they also could win. And it doesn't matter what the final score is, if they win by 100 or if they win by 1. If you win, you deserve credit for that. And I think that some people lose sight of that because we live in a world in which hot takes and people pointing out problems takes to the forefront. But then again, this is a young team that's finding its way and finds himself 1 win away in full control of their own destiny from the college football playoff. So the sky is not falling. Is this team as good as last year's? No. Would I pick last year's team to win against this year's team by probably 10 points, maybe 2 touchdowns? Yes, I would. But it doesn't mean this team can't, on their very best day, play with, and beat anybody in college football. So the inconsistency is a little alarming for sure, to be expected, and I can understand why people have panicked. But then again, all you want is a chance. And that's exactly what this team has this weekend against the best team we've seen this year in the Georgia Bulldogs.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.